One of the more interesting things about having a YouTube channel is that you actually get a really bird's eye view of how people react to certain content. Take PvP for example. See, in most PvP games, you will watch PvP action on YouTube and be like, yeah, cool. That guy killed that guy. Well done. That is how the game is meant to work, and you did it. You killed him. Nice work. And this gives birth to things like highlight reels, where people are obviously able to demonstrate their PvP prowess, and then the community generally congratulates them on their skill and accomplishment. The thing is, it's very different in The Division. See, whenever I put up a video that has any PvP footage in it whatsoever, my comment section is immediately filled with people calling me unfair, an asshole, someone ruining the experience of others, all of that sort of stuff. You know, things like, you're what's wrong with The Division, they say, or you're what's shit about PvP or in The Division, or stop griefing people, or all these sorts of things, right?
You're a noob. You're a noob.
For this reason, the PvP videos are very much a double-edged sword for myself and for anyone making Division videos. You have to expect that you're going to get a lot of hate for what you put out there versus, say, if you were putting up, say, a Call of Duty or an Overwatch video. So, this kind of makes sense, but at the same time it doesn't make any sense at all. If I was to say comment on a Call of Duty video, and I call out a specific kill by saying something like, oh my god, you totally shot that guy in the back, what a coward, wouldn't you just face him like a real man, right? Which is like a direct quote from my channel that I have received numerous times, by the way. I would sound really ridiculous if I said this on a Call of Duty, comment video, whatever. So perhaps also I commented on like a 2v1 moment where like two people were shooting against one guy and the one guy died. It would be ridiculous if I was to say something like, oh my god, two people ganking one lone wolf, what a noob, you're ruining Call of Duty, right? I would just sound like stupid, okay? That much is clear, right? And yet in every Division like PvP moment that I put up on my channel, it's been met with these exact comments. Unless the encounter is like a really clear 1v1 where both people are starting the encounter by facing each other at full health and without things like shotguns or explosive rounds involved, then people are going to call me a cowardly griefer and declare that I am everything that is wrong with the Division. Now, I've thought a lot about this over the life of the game, and most recently over the last 24 hours after doing my Deadeye video, where I showed a number of moments where I was just assassinating people in cold blood to demonstrate the power of the Deadeye gear set or shotguns. Now, to be honest, I feel bad making these videos because, well, it's really the same reason that most people leaving these comments don't like watching them. And that's the reason that there is very little honor in PvP in the Division. Its rogue system is specifically designed to be the sneakiest, most deceptive, most unfair, and imbalanced form of PvP available in almost any gaming experience I have ever played. And for that reason, I generally don't enjoy it, but I do respect it. Now, I want to be really clear about this point. I'm not saying that the inherent design of the Dark Zone PvP is bad. On the contrary, I actually really applaud Massive for trying something so very different. Like, honestly, no other game company in history really, or at least none that I know of, have provided this sort of free-form, open-world PvP environment that is just so prone to creating unfair conditions for the player. I'm sure there's some older MMORPGs that people are going to bring up, but I don't know them. WoW was my very first MMO, so I'd love to hear if anyone has any parallels, but I can't think of a more cruel and grueling PvP experience than this. It was a very bold move for Massive to try something like this. It was really ballsy, and while I don't think the Dark Zone works in its current form, I think the fact that it exists at all is a really huge contribution to the video game medium that we will all reference for years to come. I mean, like open world PvP in South Shore in World of Warcraft, for instance, is still to this day remembered as a thing that was both terrible and beautiful. We all learned so much from those moments, and I think they had a huge impact on the way that we as gamers look at open world PvP combat these days. And I honestly believe that Massive's Dark Zone has joined the same pantheon of truly transformative and memorable experiences that will shape the landscape for many years to come. Doesn't mean it's good, it just means that it's going to stick around in our memories. We are not going to forget the Dark Zone anytime soon. And I mean, we need to recognize that a whole bunch of people, myself included, don't really enjoy this style of play because it just doesn't appeal to me with the absence of a level playing field. And how easy it is for you to set up cheesy win conditions for yourself, which for me removes any and all satisfaction that I get from landing a kill. Look at all the examples of all the things that I can do to tip the scales in my favor in PvP. First of all, I can literally just sneak up behind someone, they will have no idea that I'm there, and I can literally just unload a shotgun into their head.
Join him up, please.
Oh, he's turned.
Simultaneously, I can pretend to be really friendly, and then I can shoot them in the face after I've thrown them a few heals and given them a high five and whatever else. Bam, shotgun, they are dead.
Thanks, dude. Nope, shit.
Next up, I can actually just totally outgear them with stats, right? So yeah, we have Dark Zone brackets, but there's also some variance within those brackets, and there's things like mods and blah, blah, blah. I could basically just bring more stats to the table than you do, and I'm gonna more than likely kill you unless you somehow outplay me, which is pretty rare in the division. I can also run really strong gear sets or specific configurations, such as Deadeye, which can kill a target in like 3 bullets, or a shotgun build, which can drop a target in 1 shot, or a Tactician build, which makes me pretty much unkillable in a 1v1 setting. And there's all those options available to me from a gear perspective. And that's even before we get to groups, right? I can actually just run in a 4-man squad and steamroll everyone through sheer force of numbers, right? Alternatively, I can actually run with a highly coordinated 4-man group that has perfect gear set and ability synergy and steamroll you not only with force of numbers, but also with superior tactical play and group configuration. And finally, I can actually use NPCs to my advantage, and I can literally drag them over towards you, position you closer to them than myself, and they will kill you for me. Now, of course, there are plenty more of these examples, but let's be clear, I'm not whinging about these things because these things are beautiful and terrible experiences that Massive have constructed for us, and as players we really do have 2 options. We can either sign up to this and head into the Dark Zone, or we can choose to avoid this altogether and stick to the PvE side of the game. Well, to be honest, I guess there's actually a third option, and that's where I think we start getting to the root cause of all these comments that I mentioned earlier. The third option is to hope and pray for a or even demand a level playing field in the Dark Zone. Step into the Dark Zone, pursuing this, and then get really pissed off when that level of playing field isn't presented to you. I think all of the people that are sort of feeling really unfairly done by in the Dark Zone, I think fail to understand the very nature of the Dark Zone. Or if they fail to understand it, they simply fail to accept it. They rage against being ganked by groups, being outgeared, being shock-turreted, being one-tapped by a shotgun, or any other number of things, because in their view, this is not fair, and they don't like it when things aren't fair. But look, that is the Dark Zone. That's what it is. It is inherently unfair. It is constructed from the very ground up to be an unfair experience, and in that context, it's actually totally fair because you have just as much capacity as the next person to tip the scales in your favor and set up cheesy win conditions for yourself. Abandon your principles, fight without honor, and you just might have a chance of surviving the Dark Zone, right? Well, sort of. I mean, what I've said is true from a macro gameplay design perspective. That is that everyone has an equal chance to create unfair conditions for themselves. But it's not true from an individual perspective. And that is to say, you may have a squad of people that you can play with who love to PvP in the division, and they're really geared for it and ready to go. Whereas I'm just a lone wolf trying to farm some gear solo in the Dark Zone, right? You may have way more time to farm gear than me, so your gear is way better than mine, and I'm obviously just totally vulnerable at that point. You may have built this amazing one-shot shotgun build, whereas I, being less experienced and a less knowledgeable player, don't actually know how to do that or how to counter it, so I just get wrecked as you do jumping jacks on my corpse afterwards. Now, this is where game design crashes into user experience in a very destructive way, and it creates very frustrating conditions for players that sort of feel like they should be able to PvP in a game that they've paid for, and that PvP was one of the big selling points of that experience and the product that they purchased. But people really feel like they're completely shut out of that experience because of how difficult it is to participate and survive. See, for me, this problem of there being no honor in Division PvP exists because you essentially have two types of people in the Dark Zone. You have good guys and you have bad guys. The good guys are those that are there to farm gear from what is unquestionably the most lucrative place to farm gear in the game. Honestly, DZ5-6 is the best place to farm. It is better than the 4 Horsemen farm, so long as you have a good group that gets a good rhythm to it. And so these are the people that are drawn to the Dark Zone, these PvE people, because they're actually incentivized to come to the Dark Zone for PvE grind. And those people just want to get on with that. They don't want a PvP. And then there are those sort of bad guys in inverted commas, right? These guys don't really want loot. They sort of have all the loot they want. And I mean, they'll take loot if it drops, but it's kind of like a bonus. It's a nice to have rather than the intent. For those guys, the DZ is the PvP zone. And the players there are incentivized to visit the Dark Zone because they like PvP experiences. They enjoy tense and competitive moments, or maybe they just enjoy griefing or trolling or whatever. But either way, these people are incentivized to visit the DZ because this is the only place that they can have that sort of experience. So that's the battlefield. You got sort of like the good guys and the bad guys, so to speak. And that's not to say that people who want a PvP are bad guys. They're not at all. I'm just using these two different camps, so to speak. Two totally different groups of people thrust into the one environment, pursuing completely different objectives because they've both been incentivized to do so, but incentivized by very different things. So to me, the solution is actually really simple. Stop incentivizing PvE-focused players to enter the Dark Zone and create a more meaningful reward structure for PvP players. I'll explain, right? So if PvE players felt no need to grind PvE content in the DZ, and it was made abundantly clear to them that the DZ was strictly a PvP experience, then people aren't going to feel so cheated when they die, because they know walking into that experience what they're signing up for. There are no more good guys then, everybody is a bad guy. It's like they've queued up for a match of Call of Duty. They aren't then going to be pissed off when they get killed during the match, because that's the entire point of the game. So how do you then align the incentives for PvP players if you're trying to keep PvE players out of there? Simple, make the DZ a place that actually rewards you for PvP in a way that it currently doesn't do now. At the moment, since Dark Zone funds are totally useless as there's nothing to purchase from the vendors, there are actually no rewards for killing other players unless the person you've killed had an item and you loot it for their corpse, or if you just want the fun of killing another player. Consider instead a system where you earn Dark Zone funds by killing players or surviving manhunts, and then you can spend those credits on sealed caches that give you a chance at items. In this way, I get heaps of loot if I PvP successfully, and I get no loot whatsoever if I don't PvP. I need to get kills in order to be successful, otherwise I get nothing, right? For NPCs, which I think are still an important part of the DZ, consider the idea that each NPC you or your group kills gives you a bonus to your Dark Zone funds the next time you kill a PvP target, except that you actually lose that bonus if you happen to die. This would really drive up the tension in the Dark Zone, as you'd be scouring the DZ, grinding through NPCs to stack up a huge bonus modifier for the next time you kill something, another player, and then everything would ride on that one moment when you decide to engage on a group of enemy players to cash in. So both of you are really desperate to kill each other at that point because you sort of want to cash in on your bonus, but you're also very desperate to stay alive to retain that bonus. Imagine how much more strategic and tense PvP combat would be if you had to be so much more careful with your life. Of course, ideas like this are really cheap. Anyone can come up with hundreds of ways to make the DZ better, and my idea isn't any better than your idea, it's just different. What I'm getting at more than anything else is that right now the incentives provided by the Dark Zone are inviting two very different types of players, and both of those players have very different objectives, and neither of them are really getting what they want. Align the reward system so that people know if they want PvP action and they want to be rewarded for it, they kill people in the DZ and they're rewarded for that. Tell PvE folks that there's nothing for them in the DZ unless they want to PvP, by providing them with no incentive whatsoever to go into the Dark Zone unless it's for PvP, and then buff the other PvE activities to provide better, more diversified rewards. Now, obviously, this isn't the silver bullet that will magically fix everything in the DZ, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. So long as you have these two different groups of people being invited into the DZ with different competing incentives, you are always going to have this irreconcilable tension that will invariably result in huge chunks of the player base feeling cheated and hard done by. Make the DZ the battleground it's supposed to be so that everyone who steps in there knows to be on their guard at all times, and they know that every person they see is a threat. You'll still have an incentive to kill NPCs, but you'll only see a payday when you drop a PvP target, and everyone is going to feel a lot better about those outcomes because that's what they signed up for when they stepped into the Division's dedicated PvE arena, the Dark Zone. Guys, that's just my perspective. I'd be really interested to hear your views. Obviously, I think something in the Dark Zone needs to change at this point. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments below, so let me know. If you liked this video and you found it useful, do drop it a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe at any time for end-to-end Division, Overwatch, Destiny, and later on Battlefield 1 coverage. For now, guys, thanks very much for watching. Take good care, and I'll see you in the Dark Zone. Bye-bye.